ideas to get them even more ginned up.
Jim,
this would be very hard.
Jim, what you're describing, what you're describing is, of course, what ISIS was when ISIS was expanding in 2013, 2014, and the United States government ignored ISIS, called it a regional threat, and it wasn't until the government focused on stamping out ISIS that they were finally able to do that, starting really in earnest in 2015, 2016. So a lot of Americans asking, why can't we do the same thing now with this sort of hatred?
You can and you can't. When you're dealing with ISIS, when you're dealing with a foreign threat because of the laws post 9/11, government has a lot more flexibility. The FBI has a lot more tools in its arsenal to be able to go after foreign threats as opposed to domestic threats. And so sometimes these debates get a little too simplified. This is like a big problem. I think the thing that the media is doing a great job of is grabbing people by the collar. Last year was the worst for right-wing extremism in terms of violence flowing from it since 1995, and this year is already worse than last year. This is a real problem. Conservatives can't deny it. Republicans can't deny it. Trump can't deny it. It's a huge problem, and it goes against that backdrop that we've talked about so many times on this show, where the country is changing. The white population is shrinking, and there's no doubt it's been a concerted part of the Trump campaign to be able to exploit the us versus them divisions. And when you do that, and when it gets amplified on social media, awfulness happens. And yes, you can't say, oh, the shooting took place because of Donald Trump. But you also can't deny that when you look at those rallies, when you look at the rhetoric, when you look at the output on social media, both from the campaign and from supporters, that things are getting cranked up to a level, and that it's purposeful in some ways to really play into that, there's us and there's them. And the only way you can really dial that back is through national leadership. Like that is what you have. Like if you think about what George Bush did versus what Trump did, you can either say the country's changing, let's have the party, let's have the country sort of adapt with it, or you can exploit it. He's exploited it, and we're now playing with fire.
Well, there is though a direct line that you can attach the hateful speeches and the rallies and the language that are used in those rallies. You can draw a straight line to much of the language in these manifestos. And when you have the manifesto coming out of El Paso, where the killer is specifically saying that there are too many Hispanics, there's a Hispanic invasion of Texas, and that if it doesn't stop, that Democrats are going to take control of Texas and will change the electoral map forever, so Democrats will continue winning and Republicans will lose, suddenly it becomes not only very political, but very specific. Willie, though, it's interesting that, this white nationalism and hate crime, the numbers have exploded since Donald Trump got involved in American politics. The Washington Post even reported yesterday that hate crimes in areas where Donald Trump gave rallies in 2016 have gone up over 200%. And yet the federal government is still not focusing on stamping out hate crimes. A lot of people, of course, could look back and say, well, back during the Obama administration, there was a real frustration that the government would not even mention the words Islamic radical extremism. And we're slow to start going after ISIS, the president dismissing it as a regional threat. Now, here we are. That was the threat then. This is now the threat of our time. And especially, specifically since Donald Trump came into the White House. And